You're listening to Mind the Gap with Michael Comyn. In this episode, The Mask We Wear at Work, Michael explores why many of us hide parts of ourselves in our professional lives. From the work face we put on each morning to the deeper masks of class, orientation, or neurodiversity, this is a conversation about authenticity, emotional labor, and the hidden cost of inclusion. And before we begin, a reminder that the Mind the Gap book is now available worldwide in Kindle, paperback, and hardback on Amazon. The link is in the podcast notes. Here's Michael.
I recently worked with a senior executive who told me something that he'd never said out loud before. Every morning, before walking into the office, he'd sit in his car for a few minutes and get ready to put on what he called his work face. At home with his family, he was light, funny, even a bit silly. But once he stepped through the office doors, that side of him disappeared. He thought he had to look serious, composed, always in control. And the thing is, it worked. People respected him. He was seen as reliable and professional. But over time, it wore him down. He said to me, "The truth is, I don't think anyone in the office actually knows me." Now that conversation has stuck with me because he's not alone. A lot of us put on masks at work. Sometimes it's to project confidence. Sometimes it's to hide insecurity. Sometimes it's just to fit into a culture that seems to reward toughness over vulnerability. But for some, the mask goes a lot deeper. If you're on the autism spectrum, masking can be about survival. You learn to copy behaviours so you don't stand out, so you won't be judged. It takes huge effort, and it comes at the cost of your mental health. If you grew up in a certain class background, you might have felt a pressure to change your accent, change how you dress, even edit your stories so you'll be accepted in spaces that otherwise might dismiss you. If you're part of the LGBTQ+ community, you may find yourself changing pronouns in conversations, skipping over details about your partner, or avoiding personal stories just to feel safe. These masks aren't about professionalism, they're about protection. They come from a message, spoken or unspoken, that who you really are isn't always welcome. You carry that day to day and day after day, and it takes a toll. In emotional intelligence, we often talk about authenticity. It means being aware of your emotions and values and expressing them in a way that's genuine while still appropriate to the situation. Authenticity doesn't mean blurting out everything you think or feel. It means finding a balance between honesty and discretion, between being part of the team and being yourself. But here's the problem. If you're forced to mask key parts of who you are, your personality, your background, your identity, then authenticity becomes almost impossible. And without authenticity, trust starts to erode. People sense when you're holding back. They may not know why, but they feel it. Relationships shift. They feel less human and more transactional. This is where the idea of emotional labor helps explain what's really going on. Sociologist Arlie Hochschild wrote about this in her book, The Managed Heart. She studied cabin crew who were trained to keep smiling no matter what. She realised workplaces weren't just about buying people's time and skills, they were about buying their emotions. She described two kinds of emotional labour. The first is surface acting. That's when you put on a mask and perform the expected emotions without actually feeling it. You smile even though you're angry. You keep your voice calm when inside you're boiling. And you say no problem when every part of you is thinking, big problem. It works, and it's draining because there's a gap between what you show and how you feel. The second is deep acting. That's where you try to genuinely summon the emotion that's expected. A teacher works to actually feel enthusiasm so the class will respond. A customer service rep reframes the situation to find patience instead of frustration. It's less draining than surface acting because your inner and outer lives line up a little better. but it takes effort. It still reshapes your inner life to fit the job. Now imagine layering that on top of all the other masks people already wear. Masking class, orientation, or neurodiversity. Suddenly you're not just doing your job, you're performing the emotions your job demands and suppressing the parts of yourself that you don't even think are safe to show. That's a double load. And when that effort is invisible, when it isn't recognized or rewarded, the cost is yours alone to carry. Now let's add another layer. In many large organizations, DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion, has become a central policy. The intention is good. Resources are put behind it. Cultures do shift, and being included in a DEI policy can sometimes carry its own personal cost. If you're one of the diverse hires, you may find yourself treated as a representative. Suddenly you're asked to sit on panels, mentor others, explain your lived experiences again and again. It's framed as honouring your perspective, but it can also feel like being reduced to a symbol, a whole life compressed into a teaching moment. There's emotional labour in that too, because you're not just doing your role, you're carrying the responsibility of educating others, representing a group, and sometimes absorbing the discomfort of colleagues who'd rather not face certain truths. There's also what I'll call the microscope effect. If you're the visible, diverse colleague, your successes are celebrated as proof the policy is working, but your mistakes are judged more harshly. Suddenly, you're not just yourself, you're carrying more than yourself. And when DEI isn't fully embraced, there's even the risk of backlash. People may resent your presence. They may whisper that you're only there to tick a box. That resentment erodes psychological safety. And once again, the mask becomes a survival strategy. Then there's the practical cost. Many employees from underrepresented groups are asked to sit on committees, run mentoring schemes, or lead advisory groups. It's important work, but it's often unpaid and unrecognised. It rarely leads to promotion. And so, the very people DEI is meant to elevate can find themselves sidetracked, spending hours in advocacy that the organisation benefits from, but doesn't reward. So what is the cost of being part of a DEI policy in a big organisation? It's the cost of being asked to be both employee and ambassador. It's the cost of being told you're included, but only on terms that require you to edit yourself. It's the cost of carrying the weight of change, when real inclusion should mean you don't have to. Now don't get me wrong, everyone wears a mask sometimes. It's part of being human. A mask can protect you, give you confidence, even buy you time. But when the mask becomes the only face you ever show, it doesn't just protect you, it diminishes you. And no one can thrive in a role where they're only half present. For leaders, the challenge is to notice this. Emotional intelligence is about awareness, not just of yourself, but of others. If someone on your team is quieter at work than they are outside, ask yourself why. If they seem to hold back, don't assume they lack ideas. Consider whether they feel safe enough to share them. If you're serious about inclusion, the goal isn't to invite people to the table and then expect them to wear a mask. The goal is to create a table where masks aren't necessary. And for those of us who wear masks, whether for professionalism, protection, or survival, the invitation is to notice the cost. What energy is it taking from you? What parts of yourself are left outside the room? And what would it give you and those around you if you could bring more of yourself to work? The executive who told me about his work face eventually decided to let some of it slip. Not all at once, not in a dramatic fashion, but gradually. He started allowing a little more humour into meetings. He shared more about his life outside the office. And what happened was surprising to him. People didn't respect him less, they trusted him more. His authenticity made others more authentic too. Maybe that's the quiet truth here. The The masks we wear can keep us safe, but they can also keep us separate. And if we want connection, trust, and genuine collaboration, we have to find ways to loosen them, even just a little. Thanks for listening, and mind the gap.
You've been listening to Mind the Gap with Michael Comyn. If this episode resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it. It helps us spread the message. And thank you for being one of the many thousands now listening around the world. Don't forget, the Mind the Gap book, a collection of reflections on emotional intelligence, psychology, and the challenges of being human, is now available on Amazon in Kindle, paperback, and hardback editions worldwide. The links are in the podcast notes. You can also find more episodes of Mind the Gap and its companion series, Echoes from the Margins, wherever you get your podcasts.